Alright, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Men of War Assault Squad 2 Cold War. Today we are going to take a look at the game and where it's at, how it's been doing, and if anything has changed since that rather bad release, or at least people received the game really bad. I myself saw the rating drop to a mere 8% on release day. Now it's sitting at about 15% on the Steam store with a 22% for recent reviews. Now here's the game. The game released on the 12th of September. A couple of updates have been pushed, namely 5. And the last update was pushed on the 24th of September, which is 5 weeks ago, which is kind of weird considering the developers promised lots of constant updates in different places on the Steam discussions page, which said, please give us your feedback. It says right here, it is extremely valuable to us and helps us speed up the progress. Well, not really, because it's been 5 weeks since you updated anything. Now, you know, maybe I'm being rude. Let's check out the multiplayer menu. No games matching specified filter settings found. Now, you might be like, yeah, but you're obviously looking for people in the East Coast. It's like 11 a.m. right now. Let's check it out. Let's check out my filter. Worldwide, any game type, and all of these things are not enabled. But there's no games. There's 7 people playing the game right now. That's not very good. Let's jump into the campaign and see if that's changed. So right off the bat, I think it's very important to state that there is still only 5 maps in the game, and the dynamic campaign generator, I'm doing air quotation marks even though you can't see that's why I'm saying I'm doing it. The dynamic campaign generator randomly selects these maps, and they are more or less always the same. The enemy still just sort of charges straight into the middle point and doesn't really care what happens to their infantry, as proven here by the Sherman, who is just obliterating every single infantryman who comes close, and the truck definitely didn't fare much better. Now, one thing that I did notice was that my regular squad didn't consist of M1 Garands, you know, basically these sort of World War II and then some early Vietnam era weaponry anymore. There is a lot more M16s, where the M3 grease gun is now sort of the strange thing to have in his squad versus the normal thing to have in his squad. On the Soviet side, I noticed that a lot more of them spawned with AKMs versus the SVT PPSH combination we saw a couple of weeks ago. And also, while direct controlling the Sherman, I noticed that the M1919A4 actually now has the, well, Browning M1919A4 logo or icon. Before, those were, I think, placeholders for the PKM. Tank combat is a little bit different. They removed those health bars, but the system is still in place. Feels a little bit different now with the health bars are gone, and it's definitely something that a lot of people were very opposed to. The fact that it had health bars in a Men of War game was unheard of when it comes to these tanks, and it feels a little bit more fluent. Now, don't get me wrong, as you can see, the AI is still absolutely atrocious. They will run right past your infantry, your vehicles. They will not stop until they get to this sort of pre-designated point that was placed down for them. In this case, obviously the capture point, and they will not stop running until they get to it. Now, the thing is, obviously, and a complaint lots of people had was that you are vastly outnumbered by the AI. If you do not bring a tank or at least a heavy APC in the first wave, you're going to have a very bad time. The enemy will have 2, 3, or even 4 armored vehicles in the first wave, whereas you maybe are capable of bringing 1 or 2. Where you can only have about 2 squads in a vehicle or 2 vehicles in a squad in the first wave, the enemy will spawn anywhere from 3 to 6 squads and 2 to 4 vehicles just in the first wave. So you already are faced with this like unovercomable odd unless you're somehow going to cheese, because the infantry will definitely not be able to withstand their infantry. It's just too hard. There's too many of them. So you need vehicles, or you just need to be there in the zone first, so the AI is just mindlessly and retardedly running straight for the flag. And the score there really speaks for itself. We only lost 3 infantry and 1 Sherman. They only killed 2 infantry, and they only killed our 1 tank. It's mind-numbingly boring. And I realized one of the complaints I had read was that the escape button doesn't actually pause your game. Now, for people who have played Assault Squad 2 know that the pause/break button next to your scroll lock is a way to pause the game, but escape doesn't allow you to pause it. That is, in my opinion, an issue if you're playing a single player game. It's something that's really weird. Also, you can't even save this event. You cannot save in the battle or during the battle. The only times you can save are in between the battles. Again, really weird for a single player game. Look at how this Sherman is moving. Just yesterday, I played some Assault Squad 2, and I was like, with Rob's mod, I should add. And I was like, man, the tanks are so realistic. Like, they move and they're like a heavy machine, and it has to like work its way across the map. And this is even more so for like the heavier German or Soviet vehicles like the Panthers, the King Tigers, the IS-2. I mean, they're like so cumbersome and so slow. And here, you just saw this Sherman like do almost a drift. Like, it's a freaking World War II Sherman on tracks and shouldn't be doing drifts. But okay, I actually got to say the AI tried to maybe flank, or they were just going for the other flag, which also spawned on my side, making it still very easy for me as a player with human intelligence to capture the flag. Now, obviously, I got there after the AI did because I was actually alt-tabbed loading this, kind of fully expecting it to not go without my permission, but then I tabbed back in and it was already 30 seconds underway. I couldn't save, I couldn't load, I couldn't restart, and I definitely couldn't pause it unless you press that pause button. And this battle is going to be a great example of something that I noticed with the AI. So right now the AI has 2 BMPs on the field, and they also are sort of behind these shipping crates, containers, not really sure what to call them, but they're on the runway, on the airstrip, and they're sort of stuck there right now. Now, there's going to be a multitude of vehicles. I'm talking like 4, 5, 6, 7 armored vehicles are going to be stuck behind those crates for literally no apparent reason. Also, the AI and the control of the AI seems really weird. You can have guys standing at a point and they will not engage the enemy unless you physically yourself mouse over them and tell them to target the enemy. It's something that's just very frustrating, and the AI doesn't really want to fire at enemies unless you tell them to specifically and explicitly. Now, I just noticed that smoke grenades have been added back to the game. A complaint I saw in many of the reviews was, hey, where's smoke grenades at? Now, not that smoke grenades were such a great use, in my opinion, in the previous entries to the game series, but they definitely worked. Here, they weren't in the game initially, and if you can see in the hotbar, there is no F3 key, which the F3 key is the smoke grenade key, hotkey for the smoke grenades in Assault Squad 1 and Assault Squad 2. Interestingly enough, if you press F3, the game still recognizes it and throws a smoke grenade. And interestingly enough, the smoke grenade's model in the inventory is this very weirdly sort of not 100% goodly textured model. It just looks overall very, very weird. Here we can see there's more armor showing up, and the armor is not having any of it. They are just sitting there behind these shipping containers, and they don't really care. Some of them will be tracked throughout, but a lot of them are just sitting there and they're doing nothing. It is so weird and such a frustrating end to this battle, where it could have been a very interesting one if the enemy pushed with all 4 or 5 of those pieces of armor. It would have been a ridiculously hard battle for me to hold, with AT gems coming at me, with T-34 85s, and with these, like I said, multitudes of enemy infantry waves. And it's not like, oh yeah, but you're playing against the Soviets, of course you're going to have more infantry. No, when you're playing as the Soviets, you yourself have almost no infantry to call in, and the enemy will have waves of spammable infantry, sometimes very cheap infantry, sometimes very good infantry, but regardless, just waves of spammable infantry that you don't have. You'll have 1 or 2 squads going up against literally 6+ squads, which is weird because you can only spawn in guys when you have the points for it, which you can see in the bottom right, but then the enemy is constantly spawning in infantry and vehicles as if it's a multiplayer game where they're gaining manpower. I'm not going to discuss more of the situations about guns. I think that's been done to death, and it's interesting and good to see that they did add more AKs and M16s to the infantry rosters, but there's still quite a few guns where I'm just like, when is this? Why is there SVTs? Why is there Johnson LMGs? I don't want to get into the details of it. With that all being said, let's get to the conclusion of this video. There's a couple things I would like to close on. First of all, I don't think Men of War Assault Squad 2 Cold War is the worst game ever made. I think that them naming the game Men of War Assault Squad 2 really had a lot of people's sort of hopes and expectations set very high, and then the game itself just needs a lot of work and love. I think if they just called it something different, like they did with Call to Arms, people wouldn't have been as upset, but obviously they were trying to ride on the full, name and legacy of Men of War Assault Squad 2. Also, if it would have been a DLC for like $10 or $15 or even $20, people wouldn't have been this upset. Instead of now, it's a separate game, and I definitely think a lot of the negative connotations come with that. It's a separate game, and it's seen as a cash grab by a lot of people in the reviews. On Steam Charts, which is a website I use all the time, you can see how many people have been playing games, and Men of War Assault Squad 2 Cold War had a 16 player peak in the last 24 hours, with an all-time peak of just 123. That's not very good, especially not for a game that has to rely on its community to either build for future workshop items or for multiplayer games. A 16-hour or 16-person 24-hour peak is not a good number to start with after just 7 weeks. And then there's another website right here called Steam 250, usually lists like good stuff on Steam, though they do have a Hall of Shame called the Bottom 100. If you scroll to position number 90, we can see here Men of War Assault Squad 2 Cold War sitting at a 16%. Now, they're kind of lucky, but because of the low amount of reviews, they are at a number 90 spot in this top/bottom 100. However, if you look at pure percentages-wise, there is only 3 games that are worse than them in this list. So technically speaking, Men of War Assault Squad 2 Cold War is in the top 5 worst games of all time on Steam, percentage-wise. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say about this. I really hope you guys like sort of different video than the normal sort of gameplay and live commentary. For now, I really hope you guys enjoyed. Love to see you guys in the next one. Cheers!